The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily represent those of this station or its management. It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Natural Lawn and Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs.
Good morning. Welcome to Where You Live. This is Gene Sullivan here with you today, and we don't have Tony, but we do have as our guest co-host today, Dan Greenstein from Burnick and Lifson. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Gene.
And, of course, always with us, as always, is our favorite board op, Chris Wyatt-Earp Huberty, with the fastest fingers on the buttons.
I try.
On the station. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Well, we've got a great show for you today. This is Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We are broadcasting from the Natural Green Lawn and Landscape Studios. Remember, Natural Green is a locally owned and operated lawn and landscape care company. Their mission is to use the most environmentally sensitive products available to keep your lawn and landscape looking lush and beautiful while still healthy for people and pets. Give them a call, won't you? See what they can do at your home. Their number 763-213-2410. We've got a great show. Of course, one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of activity at the state legislature, and things are starting to get a little bit scary. Yes, that's right. We thought we saw enough with last year with what was called Senate File 926 that had a provision that would have a major change with homeowner associations. Well, that bill is back in another form. The spirit of HOA ignorance lives on in the 2013 Minnesota State Legislature, and we'll be dealing with that in just a little bit. We also have another interesting story in not in Minnesota, but in a number of other states. There are states that allow a homeowner association to have a situation where if the homeowner is delinquent in their dues, they are able to prohibit that person from enjoying certain amenities of the property.
More scary stuff, Gene.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking about a case there. And then if that's not enough, if we have time here, we're going to also be dealing with another story out of Florida where in Minnesota we've been dealing with foreclosure laws where things have been trying to prolong the stay of a delinquent homeowner in their home. Well, in Florida, they're trying to put that on a fast track in getting them out. And we'll talk about that and see how that looks. But right now, as always, it is time for property management in the news. Property management in the news is brought to you by Home Furniture and Abbey Floor Coverings. Their showrooms are staffed with professionals who will help you choose what you need to fit both your lifestyle and budget. Whatever you need, chances are they'll have what you're looking for. Now, if you wish to avail yourself of special pricing and discounts you're not going to find anywhere else, all Where You Live listeners can call Customer Service Coordinator Lori Matson at 952-224-2663. That number again, 952-224-2663, and ask for your Where You Live with Gene and Tony special pricing. Well, let's deal with our first story today, Dan, and this is from our very own Minnesota State Legislature. It's Senate File 1308. The chief author is a gentleman by the name of Greg Clausen from Apple Valley. We had a similar bill last year. It was kind of known as it had the moniker of the flagpole bill, because it should have been called the kitchen sink bill, because it had 3 or 4 or 5 different provisions where that state senator wanted to see some sweeping changes with how homeowner associations can operate.
And Gene, scary is the true word of the writings that are coming from this representative.
Yeah.
I'm just afraid he either isn't familiar with the way a homeowner association is supposed to work, or he's just not doing his homework.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. You know, this proposed legislation, we'll read it to you in just a moment, folks. I think it makes a huge assumption, and this is where I think that people who are on the side of this bill are just wrong. They have this assumption, Dan, that HOAs, that there's this notion that they will foreclose on any poor, unsuspecting homeowner for just a $25, a $50, $100 infraction or fine to the rules and regulations.
And that is just so far from the truth. Every HOA's got to realize that if they start a foreclosure and they put out a lot of money in doing so, there's a large chance they're not going to get any money back.
Yeah. And a lot of HOA board members take a lot of time before pulling the trigger to go that way, because they know, like you said, it's going to cost several thousands of dollars to initiate, and they don't have that kind of money in their budgets to just do that.
And there's absolutely, there's no guarantee you're going to get any of that money back. Not only that, but in this economy where oftentimes the mortgage on the property is higher than the value of the property, it's hopeless to start a foreclosure for a small fine amount.
Yeah. You know, Tony and I have been asked over the last few years to go to a number of meetings where an HOA will have an annual meeting or a meeting with the other board members asking us for our opinion. And I remember Tony was with one association, I think down in Bloomington, a smaller association, self-managed, 44 units, if I remember.
Sure.
And she was talking to them about rental policies. But as they went on and were explaining what had taken place in their association, she realized that they were dealing with almost 50% of their homeowners being delinquent in the dues. And Tony asking the question, well, what are you doing about it? They weren't doing much other than sending out letters, because they said, we can't afford to turn it over to an attorney. So this notion that people are just foreclosing for these small fines just isn't true.
And here's the other point to this new legislation. I think we should read it soon here, but you know, it almost duplicates the amount of work an association will have to do just to collect what's normally supposed to be paid to them.
Yeah. And I'd like you to expound on that, but let's read this proposed change. It's just one sentence, a change to 515B that governs homeowner associations in our state, and it says, fines for violations of the declaration, the bylaws, and rules and regulations of the association do not become a lien and are not enforceable as assessments, but may be recovered in a civil action. So in other words, right now an association has a fine for behavior. They can place that on that homeowner's account along with the delinquent assessments, and that could be collected through a foreclosure process.
That's correct.
But now they're saying you're going to have to do a civil action. You're going to have to initiate a court action to try and cover these.
Right. And so in the typical situation, there's not going to just be a fine outstanding on a homeowner's account. In most of those situations where there's been a fine, there's going to be a delinquent account balance that homeowner has. So what this law is saying is that even if you want to have a foreclosure of that assessment account for the delinquencies, you can go ahead and do that, but you can't include the fine that's on the account. By the way, you have to go to court and seek a judgment for the fine amount. So you've got to take two actions instead of one in that case.
Yeah, to me it seems like one of the reasons the association has had the ability to put fines on is because they realize that eventually all of these small little niggling fines will get paid one day when the person refinances, when the person sells their home. So they don't have to put a lot of costs with attorneys or going to court.
Absolutely
They just stay on there and they'll be taken care of. But now they're forcing the association's hand and saying, you're going to have to spend more money if you're going to want to collect them.
And, Gene, if it's not a lien on that homeowner's home, what that means is they can sell the home and transfer the property without paying down their account.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that I think we both want to say about this bill, but we need to take a break. So let's do that right now. Folks, you're listening to Where You Live with today's guest co-host, Dan Greenstein with Bernick and Lifson. We will have more after these messages.